I love George Wendt. I love dark comedy. The 2006 film Family is exactly my kind of film, and I'm pleased to say I absolutely loved it. This is directed by John Landis and written by Mick and Brent Hanley, and stars, of course, George Wendt as Harold. We also have Meredith Monroe and Matt Keeslar as Celia and David Fuller. And the film is only about an hour in length, but it was released as part of the Masters of Horror series. I don't think I've seen anything else in that series, but I'm certainly very keen to have a look now. So if you have seen any others and can recommend any, please feel free to do so. Harold is not the typical character George Wendt plays, and I love it. He is, a serial killer, a psychopath, and there's something very interesting about his family, which is where the title comes from. His family are not exactly living. I won't say any more than that, at least about that part of the narrative. These new neighbours, the Fullers, move in and they get to know Harold and they seem to be getting along really well. But we know that Harold is a murderer, and we hear a lot of his dark thoughts, but the way these dark thoughts are delivered are as if they're actually happening. We hear characters around about him saying things, but the characters aren't actually saying it. It's what he's imagining they're saying, and it's so cleverly done, and it's so jarring because it just happens out of the blue. They could be having a really normal conversation, such as, Harold talking with the Fullers, and then one of them will say something that's completely unexpected, and it takes a second to realize that that's something that Harold is imagining they're saying. And it's so clever and so creative and so dark. It's not for the faint-hearted, but it's very, very well done. It's not scary. It's not a horror film, but it is in places quite gruesome. It's not the most graphic film. I'm not entirely sure what the rating is, and IMDb says it's rated 15. At least that is a 15 in the UK. So it's not the darkest film ever, but it definitely isn't for people who don't like dark comedy, because it's really dark in places. But it's so clever, and Harold is such a fascinating character. And the fact that I love George Wendt means that I was always going to be something about this character that I loved. But honestly, I think he's a fabulously fascinating, interesting, very, very well written character. And my only complaint is that it's not longer. I would have loved this to have been double the length. I don't necessarily think it needs to have been. I think they managed to tell the story within that amount of time very well. But I enjoyed it so much, partly because of George Wendt, but also because of how funny and dark and twisted it is. I would have loved it to have been double the length, but it didn't need to be. I think they did a great job with the narrative. The characters are brilliant, and it's not completely predictable. I don't want to say more than that without giving it away, but there are certainly things in this that I hadn't expected, and I loved it. Brilliant narrative, very well written story, very, very well written characters, great performances, particularly from George Wendt. If you're a fan of Wendt, it is of course worth checking out. And I did read quite a few reviews. Well, some reviews online after watching it, just keen to see what other people thought. It seems to be very well received, which I was delighted to see. And a lot of people are saying this is not Norm Peterson. It's not Norm Peterson, which is absolutely true. But I wasn't expecting that to be the case. I've seen George Wendt in a lot of different films, and I can say absolutely it's not like any other George Wendt film that I've seen. And I loved it. I adored every second of it. Family is a fabulous film and not easy to get hold of in the UK. I will point out, I had to buy a Region 1 import, but it was absolutely worth it. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Worth every penny. Would love to watch it again. I'm probably going to watch it again at some point. And if it sounds like your kind of film, I absolutely recommend you check it out. It is fantastic.